the other thing that Mary Ann and Stacy are passing out are evaluation forms. Well, there's one person that gives a formal evaluation, comes out to give a formal evaluation of the speaker's speech. We also invite everybody to give their own written evaluation because the best way to learn is feedback from your peers. And with that, we have Eric Graves, inspiring thought leader, brings the motivating and encouraging message of being your best authentic self. Completing his third speech, It's the Start That Stops You, from Project 3, Get to the Point. He has dedicated his life to make sure you feel better, do better, and live better. Again, with It's the Start That Stops You, please help me welcome Mr. Eric Graves.
Hello, Toastmasters. Welcome. Good morning to our guests, Nakia and Brandon. It's always great to have new faces in here. And you made it through all this odious weather, so we are pleased to have you. How many of you remember a game called Follow the Leader? There's a game called Follow the Leader. And in this game, there would be a lead child, and every other child would have to mimic the lead child either verbally and physically. And for a few minutes, I want us to do a version of Follow the Leader. And what I mean by that is I want you to do some things physically that I say verbally. So follow the leader. For example, if you have a piece of paper, and if you don't, you can do this in your mind. But on a piece of paper, I want you to write down one goal that you had this year that you haven't reached yet. As you're writing that, it's somewhere probably around your resolutions, New Year resolutions. You remember those? So one thing that you said you was going to do this year that you haven't done yet. And then I want you to ask yourself this question. Why didn't I reach that goal? Now, I do believe if you're like me, some of you are already in 2013. Well, next year I'm going to, but how many of you know it's still November and December to go? So why didn't you reach that goal? Ask that question to yourself. Why didn't you? And no matter what you write down on your paper or what excuse, what reason you put down for not reaching your goal, I'm willing to bet that it was the start that stopped you. That I want to propose to you that it was the start that stopped you. And what I mean is there's two things that I believe that stops every person in this room that has stopped us and haunted men from years to come and haunts us to this day. And one of them is excuses. Everybody say excuses. Excuses. See how we're slow to say excuses. Excuses. And let me give you a coaching definition of excuse. It's the illusion we give ourselves to stop progress. It's worth repeating. It's the illusion. It's the mirage. It's the facade that we give ourselves to stop progress. And we know about these excuses, these mirages, don't we? Not enough time, too busy, procrastination, low energy. These things have haunted us and stopped us. But see, one of the things that these excuses lead to, it boils down to one thing. All roads lead to, we just don't want to do it. As adults, I coach adults and I work with children. And one thing children have to obey what parents say. But one thing we learn about adults, or that we know about ourselves, is we do what we want to do. So most of the things that we haven't done in life is probably because we just didn't want to do it. A story is told of a man who goes over to his neighbor's house. He knocks on the door. He says, "Good morning. I was wondering if I could use your lawnmower." His neighbor looks at him and says, "Well, can't let you use the lawnmower today because my toe hurts." He said, "I'm sorry." He said, "What does your toe hurting have to do with me using your lawnmower?" He said, "Look, buddy, if I don't want you to use it, any excuse will do." And that's not true. If you don't really want to do something, any excuse will do. It was Thomas Fuller who said that a bad excuse is worse than none at all. Wow. A bad excuse is worse than none at all. So excuses. So we just don't want to do what we don't want to do. So excuses have plagued us, it has stopped us, it stopped each of us from reaching our goals in 2012 and probably 2013. But excuses is not alone, it's in a relationship. It's in a relationship with the second thing that stops each of us, and that's the comfort zone. Our comfort zone. Whatever you wrote down in your paper, or whatever you're thinking about this year that you didn't accomplish, either there was an excuse to why you didn't do it, or you got comfortable doing what you've already been doing. Now, comfort zone is this idea of doing something often enough that you get comfortable doing it again. Now, up until now, that might have had some negative terms. Everybody's in their comfort zone, but I don't want to put it in the negative. I want to give it to you in the positive sense. That if it's this idea of doing something often enough that you get comfortable doing it again, then that I would like to suggest to you to pick something new to get comfortable about. That's all. Now, comfort zones, though, is this idea that it was Will Rogers that said, matter of fact, that even if you're on the right track, you'll get ran over if you just sit there. So in life, it's about this progression of movement that we have to take. We have to take certain actions in order to get through our comfort zone, to overcome these comfort zones. And I want to give you some tips now. So we talked about these excuses that stop us. We talked about these comfort zones that stop us. Now I want to give you some tips that's going to help us. Number one, identify your top 3 priorities. Now remember, we're grown. So most of the things that we didn't do or that we don't do is because we just didn't want to. So identify what are your top 3 priorities for today. Second thing you can do is eliminate ignorance. Most of the things that we haven't done, we don't have all the information we need to move forward. So find out what you don't know. Third thing is change your habits. Now habits are hard to break because one of the things we get comfortable with is our habits and our routines. But one thing you can do with a habit is change it little by little. I'm a big pop drinker. I love Pepsi. I know there's a Pepsi Coke thing, and when I don't have Pepsi, I'll drink Coke. But at one point, I wanted to drink more water than I drank Pepsi, but I love pop. So what I started to do was one day I took Pepsi, and every other drink was water until water became more dominant. So with habits, you just got to change them one at a time. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we're moving forward, here's what I'm proposing to you as you conclude this year. That I am challenging myself personally to accomplish one thing that I said I was going to do. One more thing. I've done a lot this year, but there's one more thing. One of the things that I didn't do, I'm going forth, and I want to finish it before the year is over. And I'm challenging you, I'm asking you, will you join me and pick one thing on your list to do this year before it's over? Will you? Maybe, kind of. Will you at least consider it? Then if you do, then I look forward to seeing each of you in your dreams. Thank you.